What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got another live fantasy football mock draft for you, back on Fantasy Pros with a 12-team full-point PPR mock. We have that 12th overall pick, so should be pretty interesting. Roster-wise, same thing as usual. One quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and then 5 bench spots. So with that being said, we can kick this thing off. And while we load, a quick reminder, if you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, and also give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. But with that being said, it is our turn to make a selection. And let's quickly look at the first couple of picks here. You see McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Barkley, Kamara, Jonathan Taylor. Nothing too crazy with the first 5 picks. Then Devontae Adams, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry. Good value on Derrick Henry with the 8th pick. Cam Akers, going in the first round. Tyreek Hill and then Stephon Diggs. So 3 wide receivers in that first round. I guess it kind of makes sense, this being full point PPR. But look, this right now should be no shock to anybody in terms of who our pick will be. I absolutely love Austin Eckler. You've heard me talk about him pretty much in every single mock draft that I've done. I have, rankings coming out here pretty soon, and our draft guide will be available for the 2021 season as well. And you'll be able to see there that I've pretty much got Austin Eckler as a top 5 running back across all scoring formats. I love the upside that he has. I think he has a very realistic shot of putting together, an 900 type of season on the ground and through the air. So I'm not going to waste any more time or continue repeating myself when it comes to Austin Eckler. He will be our first no-brainer pick. But afterwards, I want to, maybe make this a little bit more balanced. So let's go ahead and add a wide receiver. And is it going to be DeAndre Hopkins or A.J. Brown? And I'll probably go with A.J. Brown. I think he has a higher chance of more volume. Yes, the Titans are, a run first team, but Kyler Murray does a lot of running on his own as well. And there's a lot of weapons around DeAndre Hopkins all of a sudden. You've got Christian Kirk, you've got Moore, you have got AJ Green. So a lot of guys there. I'm not necessarily saying that Hopkins will all of a sudden, lose production, but AJ Brown to me has probably an easier shot of just getting that automatic volume. So he's going to be our selection here at the turn. And then after this, we will go ahead and quickly analyze the second and third rounds and see what we come up with and see some of these value picks potentially that we might have or might not have. So going to the draft board, you see a run on wide receivers after A.J. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Aaron Jones, Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas. Love the value on Michael Thomas. I appreciate people not sleeping on Keenan Allen. Then a little bit of a run on running backs, Gibson, Swift, Nick Chubb. Great value on Nick Chubb at the end of the second round. Yes, it's full point PPR scoring, but, he's still got a high rushing upside. And I will say that for Nick Chubb, again, at that point in the draft, to me, is probably where he should be going. Now, yes, if it's standard, it would be a different story. Then Travis Kelce, Calvin Ridley at the end of the second, pretty good value. George Kittle, Joe Mixon at the start of the third, good value. Darren Waller. So the top 3 tight ends all go pretty much right next to each other. Then Patrick Mahomes. Again, I wouldn't be selecting a quarterback this early on, but that is just me. Najee Harris, in the middle point of the third round. And Chris Carson was still available. I understand what people are saying about Najee Harris. Yes, he's going to have a lot of volume, but is it in an environment that's going to precipitate success? That offensive line still has question marks. Big Ben isn't exactly, getting any younger. And wide receiver-wise, the Steelers are stacked there. So you would think that might be a focus for them offensively. So I'd much rather have someone like a Chris Carson is what I'm getting at. Then wide receiver-wise, you see Allen Robinson, Robert Woods, Terry McLaurin, Chris Carson, Julio Jones, and Chris Godwin. Would have loved if we could have gotten Julio Jones at the end of the third round. I think that would have been very good value. But, turning our attention here to wide receiver and running back, I think right now to me personally, there is one running back that I would go with more than any other, and that is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Yes, considering where you drafted him last year in the middle of the first round, he was disappointing, but he was pretty good before Le'Veon Bell joined. And now with those guys gone, that competition gone, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have a solid season, and getting him at the end of the third round is something that I am perfectly all right with. I think he's going to be involved as a pass catcher as well. So again, tying that to that PPR element. But now again, I'm not necessarily in love with the other running back options, Sanders, Dobbins, Montgomery. I'd probably go Gaskin or a Mike Davis ahead of them. I would probably go with Miles Sanders as the top guy out of all those. I'm looking at wide receiver, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson. Yes, Fantasy Pros has them ranked here a little bit higher, but in my PPR rankings, the guys that stick out to me here are Adam Thielen and Cooper Kupp. And I know that, Fantasy Pros might call it a reach or whatever, but we have an extreme pick here. And what I mean by that, we're picking at the end, the 12th pick overall. So that means we pretty much have to wait 23 selections until every other pick. So I'm going with Adam Thielen here. He's not going to be available to me with our next selection, and I love the upside PPR-wise. So I have no problem going Adam Thielen there. I wasn't all that excited about the other running backs. So let's see what we have available to us here at this point in time with tight ends, with running backs, with wide receivers. And again, quickly checking the draft board. I'll give you guys my thoughts on some of these players. You see J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders. Noah Fant is the fourth tight end. That seems way too early. Amari Cooper, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs. So Travis Etienne going in the fourth round before James Robinson, even though coaches have said he's going to be doing more pass catching work. That's a little bit concerning. You see some wide receivers, Lamb, Moore, Deontay Johnson, good value on him. Mike Evans, David Montgomery, Cooper Kupp, great value on Cooper Kupp at the start of the fifth round. Oh my gosh. Kenny Golladay, Josh Allen. So a run on quarterbacks here. Brendan Ayuk afterwards, T. Higgins, Kyler Murray. Good value on Kyler Murray, all things considered, in the middle of the fifth round. Mark Andrews, Tyler Lockett, Lamar Jackson, TJ Hawkinson. Man, that one stings because I would have loved to land TJ Hawkinson here at the end of the fifth round and kind of just get our starting roster with some really strong PPR options solidified. But that probably just means that we're going to wait on the tight end position until a little bit later on. So right now, if I'm looking at running back, there's two names here, Kareem Hunt and Mike Davis. Kareem Hunt is a safe play. He's probably someone that, might have a little bit of more value, obviously, if Nick Chubb gets hurt. But to me, Mike Davis is the guy that you should be targeting at this point in time. Sure, maybe his role isn't as solidified as Kareem Hunt because we know that Kareem Hunt, whether Chubb is there or not, will have a role and that he'll sustain production in PPR especially. But with Mike Davis, the Falcons have said that, to some extent it could be a competition and, that could scare some people off of Davis. But they just paid him and brought him in. I think that he's going to be the guy, and he does offer pass catching upside. So I'm going to go with Mike Davis here as one of our first selections. And now I am looking at either, again, tight end or wide receiver. And since we got sniped with TJ Hawkinson, I'm going to turn my attention to wide receiver. Guys like Juju Smith, Odell, DJ Shark, Courtland Sutton. None of these names are, I guess I would say, all that sexy. They all have question marks at this point in time. Honestly, what I might do here, I'm probably just going to double down on running backs. I was making the case between Kareem Hunt and Mike Davis. Well, why not just land both of them? get another piece at the most important position with Kareem Hunt. And like I said before, if something happens to Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt is pretty much a top 10 running back. So, kind of making up for some of that risk with a Mike Davis if it does exist. But now we can turn our attention to, probably deservedly so, wide receiver and, potentially even quarterback. But let's see what these other teams, their situations are at quarterback so that we know if we can wait on the position. So obviously we don't have one yet. And going down the board, there's only one other team, team one, that doesn't have a quarterback. So I can probably wait on the quarterback position. But looking at some of these other picks after Kareem Hunt, I really like Cortland Sutton, where he went in the 6th round. Jamar Chase in the 6th round, not bad. Then Brandon Cooks in the 7th round, that's good value as well. I like Justin Herbert in the 7th round, Aaron Rodgers in the 7th round, good value. Jalen Hurts, Ryan Tannehill, and slowly we're seeing with someone like a Jalen Hurts, his stock is going up. So that's something interesting. It really speaks volume to that rushing upside for dual threat quarterbacks and how heavily that is weighted in fantasy football scoring. But let's look at our wide receivers here. And the guy that I probably am most excited about at this point in time, well, there's 2 of them, Marvin Jones and Antonio Brown. And that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with them right here. I think Marvin Jones, people are sleeping on him because what's to say that he won't outproduce DJ Shark? I think that's a very real possibility. And, at worst, kind of just duplicate DJ Shark's numbers. Both guys are proven. I would say Marvin Jones even more so. He's got high touchdown upside. Obviously we'll see what happens with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, but I like Marvin Jones. I'm going to get him here. And then our second selection, Antonio Brown. I've said this before. Antonio Brown is going to continue to go up draft rankings. And, if you look at some other mocks that we've done, Antonio Brown hasn't been this high up before. And in my own wide receiver rankings, I honestly have him, right around the 20th overall wide receiver. And I still think he's underrated here per FantasyPros. I'm going to scoop him up, no questions asked. And then in the next couple of rounds, you see, okay, reach alert per FantasyPros. But, I've done mocks where recently Antonio Brown has gone, in the 6th or 7th round. So I'm not paying all that much attention to that. And now, like I said before, we're in a position where we can just go and get our quarterback and get our tight end because we did the math that the other teams here had already addressed the quarterback position. So now I will go and add a quarterback, and it will be Joe Burrow. I think him and Justin Herbert, the more I look at it, the more I consider it, could potentially be in that similar type of production range their sophomore year. Yes, the offensive line for the Bengals does worry me a little bit, but, Burrow is probably going to have to air it out like crazy, and I can always get a Matthew Stafford later on to kind of back up that pick. So let's go with Joe Burrow here. That will be our first selection. And then afterwards, we do have to pay some attention to the tight end position. I'm looking at these guys. I probably will, with my last 2 picks, probably get a backup quarterback and a backup tight end. But first, I'll just go with a Robert Tonyan, someone with high touchdown upside. And then, you could argue is the second, I guess after Aaron Jones, third preferred pass catcher for Aaron Rodgers on that offense. Obviously, if Rodgers leaves, then we could have a different conversation. But right now, that's not something that we have to consider. So, we've got 2 final picks to make here, and I alluded to it. We'll go with Matthew Stafford as one of them. I think he's a rock solid later round backup quarterback to add, especially if you haven't, gotten a stud quarterback early on. That obviously wasn't the case with us, or that was the case with us. So we can add Matthew Stafford as a backup. Looking at handcuffs, we don't necessarily really have any handcuffs at the running back position, like an Alexander Madison or something like that we need to address. So now let's just continue with our plan and get a backup tight end, just because Robert Tonyan, again, he's not necessarily going to set the world on fire. And the chance of him reproducing his touchdown success from last season, that is, that's just very tough to project. So right now, the guys that I'm looking at are Irv Smith Jr. I think he's got some nice, you know, upside, some breakout potential. Later on, I'd be looking at an Adam Troutman and an Anthony Ferkser. I don't want to, reach that much, so I'll just go Irv Smith Jr. And I will say, this would be a little bit different if the draft itself went a little bit later. But at that point in time, I still think that we'd be discussing a lot of similar names, et cetera, et cetera. So this still does a good job of kind of putting together a big picture idea of what our roster would look like, dissecting some of these players. And man, Fantasy Pros was not a fan of our draft. D+. Wow. I think that is a little bit harsh, but let's break it down. Because our first 4 picks, I think we kind of hit out of the ballpark. Austin Eckler, A.J. Brown with our first 2 picks. That's great value in my opinion. I don't really have any regrets there in the 3rd round. Considering what running back options were available, I think we did the best with what we could in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then, going with an Adam Thielen afterwards. I like the upside there for wide receiver. And it's kind of a situation, again, where I bring it up. You kind of have to reach when you're at the end of these mocks with that 1st or 12th overall pick. And then afterwards, you can kind of, we got maybe a little bit unlucky in the 5th round where a TJ Hawkinson didn't fall to us, or maybe there was a run on quarterbacks with a Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, who I definitely would have considered at the turn with that first 6th round pick. But instead, we go Mike Davis and Kareem Hunt. So what I will say is our running back position is, in my opinion, very deep and very solid, especially in PPR scoring. So, when you have that at a minimum, I don't think you should have a D+ grade. Wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Adam Thielen. I like those 2 starters. If there's injuries, we could be in trouble because, backup-wise, Marvin Jones, Antonio Brown. And then we decided to get backups for Joe Burrow and for Robert Tonyan. I knew that was going to lead to a lower grade, but again, I just want to emphasize getting in that practice of, potentially strengthening weak positions when you identify that during your draft process. But at the end of the day, let me know what you guys thought. Did you agree, disagree with this? And if you have any questions, let me hear them in the comment section. And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.